Lena left college, feeling the autumn chill in the air and a gentle breeze that seemed to carry away the memories of her youth. On her way home, down a narrow street in the suburbs of Chicago, her thoughts mingled with the aroma of freshly baked bread from the local bakery and the sounds of distant city conversations. When she opened that old door, which since childhood had seemed like a portal to the past, the house greeted her with a quiet, almost whispering warmth. Every scratch on the wooden threshold, every worn patch of paint on the wall echoed with the distant years. Lena involuntarily held her breath, feeling the forgotten moments of her childhood and youth intertwining with the present silence. Inside the house, where each room was filled with soft light and warm memories, Raylan awaited her, her 19-year-old stepbrother, who had changed beyond recognition over time. He greeted her with an easy yet somewhat guarded smile, as if trying to balance between childhood games and adult responsibilities. "Hi, Lena," he said, tossing her an old American football, a symbol of their carefree childhood that now seemed so distant and fragile. Lena noticed how his confident and warm voice hid a thin sadness and anxiety, as if behind every word lay an unspoken, "How are you really?" A strange sense of excitement gripped Lena as she unpacked her things in the quiet living room. Here, among familiar photographs and old books, every little thing seemed imbued with special meaning. Raylan did not immediately start a conversation. He only knocked softly on her door, as if hesitant. "Want to order pizza later?" he asked. And even this casual question took on a tone of care and hope for the restoration of a long-lost connection. Lena, feeling every word of Raylan's penetrating her soul, nodded in agreement, and they headed to the kitchen, where the simplicity and coziness of American life blended with deep personal experiences. The house, decorated in the style of a typical American country estate, had everything to bring back Lena's memories of a happy childhood. An old sofa with worn pillows at the ends, family photos in wooden frames, the warm yellowish light of lamps reminiscent of the coziness of family evenings. In these small details, she saw not just household items, but keepers of her history, witnesses to joy and pain, laughter and tears. Lena sat by the window, watching how the late afternoon light played with the shadows on the windowsill. In her soul, the joy of meeting mixed with the quiet sadness of lost time. Memories of how they once played together in the garden, laughing until they cried, suddenly mixed with the realization of how much had changed. She felt that this house, like her heart, had to undergo a new transformation. Her inner voice whispered softly, "Everything begins anew here." And this premonition gripped her with particular force. Raylan, noticing the depth of her thoughts, came closer, and his gaze met her eyes, filled not only with memories but also with hope for the future. At that moment, Lena realized that their meeting was not just a coincidence, but a sign that it was time to learn to understand each other again, to let go of the past and to look bravely into the future. Here in this house, against the backdrop of golden autumn leaves, a new chapter of their shared history began, full of American sincerity, hope, and quiet, but confident steps toward change. The morning in the house was filled with soft light when Lena and Raylan found themselves together in the small kitchen. An antique ceramic table, adorned with a couple of faded photographs, served as a silent witness to their morning conversation. Lena poured coffee into a couple of cups, and Raylan, with a slight smile, reminded her of the old days when they used to have breakfast together, filled with laughter and simple joys. "Remember how we cooked breakfast on the old stove, and everything always seemed magical?" he asked, and his voice was filled with the sincerity of nostalgia, which instantly warmed the atmosphere. As they talked, memories of funny pranks surfaced like old family albums. Lena told him about how they used to hide behind the curtains and go on treasure hunts in the garden, where every flower bed was a hiding place for hidden toys. Raylan noted with a tender smile that time passed, but inside them always remained that childlike spark, innocence, openness, and the ability to enjoy the little things. In these stories, filled with melodic lightness, the reader felt as if they were returning to a world where there was no room for worries and troubles, where every moment was filled with happiness. The house they found themselves in was not just a building, but a living repository of their history. Lena, walking through the corridors, touched the wallpaper as if feeling the warmth of long-gone years. Every corner breathed with memories, from the antique coat rack to the small fireplace where the whole family used to gather. Rayland, as if sensing this nostalgia, told her how his mother always said, "Home is not the walls, but those who live in it." These words resonated in Lena's soul, reminding her that true warmth is not measured by physical things, but is born in hearts united by shared memories. Over a cup of coffee, the conversation turned light, almost playful, when Lena remembered how once they tried to turn the old TV into a mini cinema, using whatever they had, and how they laughed when instead of a movie, technical errors flashed on the screen. "You said then that we were the best repair team," she teased, and his voice was filled with the warmth of genuine laughter, which could dispel any shadows of sadness. These funny stories, like little sparks, ignited in their hearts the fire that united the past and the present. However, behind all this lightness lay a thin thread of sadness. Lena noticed how in every memory flashed a shadow of loss. The years when they were closer, when everything seemed simpler. Sometimes a slight sadness appeared in her gaze, as if she understood that time takes away not only joyful moments, but also precious instants that can never be returned. Raylan, watching her, silently nodded, as if sharing this silent realization. "Perhaps it is in these moments that we find true warmth, in what we remember," he whispered, and his voice sounded like a quiet consolation, promising that memories will always be with them, despite any changes. As the morning conversation came to an end, when the sun's rays began to break through the curtains, Lena and Raylan realized that their meeting was not just a coincidence. It was a chance to regain lost closeness, an opportunity to restore a bond that time had slightly weakened but could not destroy. "We can start by remembering who we were and rebuild what is dear to us," Raylan said, and his words sounded like a quiet promise of a future where love and memories would become the foundation for new beginnings. The early morning brought subtle changes to the house. Silence interrupted only by the rustling of the wind outside the windows, and the quiet hum of the working refrigerator set the tone for the upcoming revelation. Lena, sitting in a corner of the living room, felt an inner tension. Something elusive hung in the air, as if the room itself was preparing to share secrets. Her gaze was filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety, as if she knew in advance that today everything would change. Raylan, slowly sitting down at the table, seemed ready to share something important, opening his soul for the first time. His voice, usually confident and light, today sounded with a hint of hesitation. "Lena, I've long dreamed not just of succeeding, but of creating something meaningful," he began, looking intently into her eyes as if seeking support and understanding there. Every word of his penetrated deeply, evoking in Lena a feeling as if a whole world of inner aspirations was opening before her. She saw how his face lit up with a dreamy spark, and then an involuntary shadow of doubt. He dreamed of becoming an engineer, not for fame, but to change people's lives, creating technologies that give hope and improve the quality of life. In this confession, there was strength, but also the thin pain of past failures, hidden under a layer of ambitions. Within Rayland, a struggle raged. He wanted to be strong and successful, but the fear of mistakes and disappointments sometimes paralyzed him. His words reflected inner instability, like a quiet echo of old failures that he tried to drown out. Lena felt her heart tighten with sympathy. She herself had once stood before similar trials, and understanding that even the strongest sometimes have doubts gave her the determination to support her brother. In his voice, there were quiet vibrations of pain and stubbornness, rather than a direct cry for help. It was a subtle psychological nuance, the desire to achieve more, despite inner fears that tore him apart. After the first confession, Raylan fell silent, and a pause filled with unspoken questions ensued. Lena, smiling softly, approached, placing her hand on his as if offering her support. "I know how hard it is. There are times when it seems like the whole world is against you," she said quietly, her voice filled with sincere empathy and warmth. This moment of openness became a turning point, not just an exchange of dreams, but a real admission of vulnerability. Rayland, embarrassed, looked away, and began to talk about how one failure on an important project made him doubt his own strength. Every word, filled with fear and pain, echoed in Lena's heart, making her ponder that true human strength is revealed precisely when one is able to admit one's weaknesses. The dialogue turned into a deep reflection, where the past, full of mistakes and losses, mixed with bright hope for the future. Lena remembered her own moments of doubt and uncertainty when the world seemed ruthless and unpredictable. But it was in these moments that she learned to appreciate the support of loved ones, who, like faithful beacons, showed the way in the darkness. "We cannot change the past, but we can create the future," she said, her voice firm, like a promise. In her eyes sparkled a determination that gradually penetrated Raylan's heart, making him believe that the mistakes of the past were just steps on the path to a great future. As the conversation deepened, a spark of new faith began to glow in the air. Raylan, previously restrained and closed, began to open up more, his words filled with confidence and determination. He realized that his dreams could not remain just secret. They had to be embodied in life, despite all fears and failures. At that moment, something more than just a brotherly bond arose between them. It was an emotional transformation when mutual support became a source of strength for both. Lena saw how her words, full of understanding and sincere care, began to change his inner world, giving him the strength to move forward, despite all difficulties. The morning turned out to be gloomy and heavy, as if nature itself was preparing for the emotional storm that was about to unfold. Lena woke up from the feeling that something was wrong. The air in the house had become thicker, and every room seemed filled with unspoken words. She walked through the corridors, feeling how the echo of her steps seemed to emphasize the inner silence, which could soon turn into a storm. A nervous premonition grew, as if uncertainty hung in the air, giving no rest. In the living room, where calm and warm memories had previously reigned, Raylan suddenly closed himself off. His gaze, usually confident and full of dreams, now wandered in the distant corners of doubt. Lena noticed how his hands trembled, and his voice with each word seemed slightly crumpled, as if behind every uttered sound hid the pain of past failures. "I can't keep this inside anymore," he said softly, almost with effort, and in his words sounded a wound open to the light. He told her how another failure in working on a project had shattered his confidence, made him feel that every effort was in vain. Words flowed in a stream, and their weight pressed on everyone in the room, leaving a trace of deep emotional wounds. Between the words, an abyss of fears opened up. Lena, listening to her brother, felt how her own inner demons began to come to life. The same fears that she hid deep in her heart surfaced. The inner voice said that every failure is a blow, every word is an accusation, and every shadow on the wall now seemed like a symbol of unresolved conflicts. The dialogue turned into an exchange of heavy confessions. Raylan spoke of the fear of not being good enough, and Lena, of her own doubts and feelings of guilt for not always being there. These confessions, filled with pain and naked weaknesses, turned into a psychological storm where every word echoed in the soul. In the heat of the frank conversation, the atmosphere in the house was discharged with flashes of anger and tears. Lena, unable to bear the inner tension, began to snap at Raylan with phrases that reflected not only his failures, but also her own pain from the feeling of lost support at a critical moment. She tried to express all the accumulated feelings, resentment, fear, and, at the same time, hope for a better future. Raylan, hearing her words, felt how everything inside him tightened with pain, but despite this, he tried to find the strength to respond. In his eyes flashed a spark of understanding. They both suffered, and every word became a cry for help. This was not just a quarrel, but an emotional battle in which the bitterness of disappointments and the desire to heal wounds accumulated over the years intertwined. When emotions reached their peak, a torturous silence ensued in which everyone could hear the beating of their own heart. Lena went outside to breathe fresh air, trying to make sense of the turmoil of thoughts and feelings. The rain began to drizzle quietly, as if nature itself was trying to soothe the pain, covering them both with a thin veil of calm. At that moment, Lena felt that the storm inside was not just an outburst of anger, but a sign that it was time to accept her fears and begin the path to healing. She understood that conflict is an inevitable part of growth, and only through open confrontation with inner demons can one find true strength. Returning to the house, Lena found Raylan sitting by the window, his face thoughtful and tired. He seemed to have already accepted all the weight of his mistakes and failures. Lena approached and said softly, "I know how hard it is for you now, but we can go through this together." These words, said with sincere care, became the first step toward reconciliation. Raylan, looking into her eyes, felt that his wounds could begin to heal if he was not alone in his struggle. Between them arose a thin but strong thread of mutual understanding in which every pain, every fear became a shared burden that they were ready to bear together. The next morning, after a night filled with an inner storm, the house seemed to come alive again. Lena and Raylan met in the kitchen. The atmosphere was different. The cold misunderstanding had given way to quiet understanding. Sitting at the table, they were silent, giving space to their thoughts. Lena noticed how her gaze lingered on Raylan, whose eyes had not yet fully recovered from the experienced emotional storm. She approached and, without saying a word, hugged him. This gesture became the first bridge between two hearts filled with pain but seeking consolation. After a short but meaningful silence, Raylan suggested trying to restore the lost balance, starting with a common cause. Together, they set about repairing an old radio station, an item that once united them in childhood games. Every action, every movement was filled not only with physical labor, but also with deep symbolism. The joint restoration of technology became a metaphor for their relationship, which required restoration and support. In the process of work, they discussed past events, recalling how small moments, which seemed insignificant, created the basis for their mutual understanding. Raylan, carefully screwing in small details, talked about his fears and failures, and Lena, handing him tools, quietly assured him that together they could overcome any obstacles. In working on the radio station, Lena and Raylan gradually found a common language again. Their conversations became more open and sincere, now not so much about past failures as about the future that they could build together. Every word spoken in the process of work took on new meaning, as it was accompanied by real actions, confirming their readiness to support each other. At that moment, the house was filled with the quiet sound of tools and mutual care, a symbol that even in the darkest hours, it is possible to find light if there is someone nearby who extends a helping hand. After long hours of work, when the equipment was restored, it was time for silent reflection. Lena and Raylan sat on the old sofa, which had seen many of their joys and sorrows. Between them reigned a silence filled with deep inner agreement. This silence was not empty. It spoke of acceptance, forgiveness, and understanding. Their gazes met, and in their eyes read a quiet confidence. The past cannot be changed, but together they can create a new, stronger present. In the evening, when it began to darken outside the windows, Lena took an old photograph found among the things and handed it to Raylan. In the picture, they were captured together, smiling and carefree, like children united by a common dream. This gesture became a symbol of their new beginning, a promise to return the lost warmth and trust, despite past disagreements. Raylan, looking closely at the photograph, said softly, "We will manage because now we are together." These words became not just a phrase, but a manifesto, a confirmation that true strength lies in unity, in the ability to accept each other with all mistakes and weaknesses. By the end of the day, the tense emotional tension gradually gave way to calm and new energy. Lena and Raylan realized that overcoming difficulties together not only strengthened their bond, but also gave each of them the opportunity to look at their fears from a different angle. They understood the support of a loved one can turn pain into a lesson and fear into a stimulus for further growth. In the warm glow of the evening lights, the house turned into a refuge where every word, every gesture reminded them that together they could overcome any trials. At dawn, when the first rays of the sun cautiously broke through the clouds, Lena and Raylan were preparing for a new day, filled with promises. The atmosphere of morning freshness and quiet excitement about the future reigned in the house, where every detail, from the shimmering shadows on the walls to the gentle rustling of the curtains, reminded them that time can heal old wounds and give new beginnings. Lena, looking out the window, felt how the past gave way to a bright future, and in her heart arose a determination to move forward. The moment came when Lena had to set off on her journey, and Raylan had to stay and continue fighting for his dreams. Before parting, they stopped in the hallway, where every shadow seemed like a silent witness to their long journey to reconciliation. Raylan, with a trembling voice, said, "I will always remember these moments. We found support in each other, and this will forever remain a part of us." Lena, with a sincere smile and a sparkle in her eyes, replied, "Distance will not separate us. Our memories and promises are alive as ever." These last words became a quiet vow for the future, when every parting is only a prelude to a new meeting. In the farewell atmosphere of the house, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the faint noise of the city outside the windows, an elusive symphony of quiet farewell sounded. Every movement, every word was imbued with tender sadness and gratitude for the journey taken. In these last minutes, Lena and Raylan exchanged glances in which reflected the whole strength of their experiences, victories, and losses. This was not just a parting, but the beginning of a new stage where memories would become an anchor linking the past and the future. Remembering all the trials and emotional storms they had to overcome, the heroes realized that every minute of pain and doubt had led them to this day. Every difficulty became a lesson, and every conflict an opportunity to become stronger. Lena felt how the echo of these storms resonated in her soul, turning into a quiet but confident call to change. This understanding became for her a symbol that even the darkest times can give way to light if there is someone nearby who is ready to walk together through life. Before leaving, Lena handed Raylan a small box with family photographs, symbolizing their shared history and the love that unites them even at a distance. "Let this be a reminder that we are always close, even if our paths temporarily diverge," she said softly, squeezing his hand. Raylan, taking the box, replied, "Our destinies are intertwined forever. In every new day, I will see the light of our memories and the strength that helps us move forward." These words became a pledge of future meetings, a promise that true connection knows no distance and time. As Lena drove away, her gaze lingered on the house where it all began. The farewell was touching and filled with tenderness, like a quiet chord that continues to sound even after the music has gone. Every step on the road was permeated with a sense of deep unity with the past and bright faith in the future. In the souls of Lena and Raylan, a new confidence was born. Any trials can be overcome if one does not forget where one came from and believes that every new dawn brings a chance to start anew.